For over 40 years, George Strait has been the undisputed king of country music, a title earned through an unparalleled string of 60 #1 hits. But he's also been the king of silence. In an entertainment world that demands constant exposure and thrives on drama, Strait built an impenetrable fortress around his private life. He became a living enigma, a man more myth than media personality. His rule was simple: the music is for the world, but his life is his own. This wasn't just a preference, it was an ironclad code that baffled an industry built on access. So, when fellow icon Toby Keith passed away, the world expected a polite, professionally crafted statement at most. But what they got was something else entirely. 73 years old, in a move that sent shockwaves through Nashville, George Strait finally spoke up. And in his rare, carefully chosen words, he revealed a shocking truth about respect, rivalry, and the hidden heart of a man who never let the world in. To truly grasp the magnitude of Strait's statement, you have to journey back to the event that forged his silence. His career is a story of two distinct parts: the life before the tragedy and the life after. In the early 80s, as his debut single Unwound was climbing the charts, George was a young, happy family man, living out the very dream his songs described. He and his high school sweetheart, Norma, whom he had eloped with in 1971, were building a beautiful life far from the Nashville glitz. They had their daughter, Jennifer, born in 1972, a bright-spirited girl who was the absolute joy of their lives. Then came their son, George Jr., affectionately known as Bubba, in 1981. This was the foundation of his world. But on a quiet night, in June of 1986, that foundation was pulverized. Jennifer, at just 13 years old, was a passenger in a car with friends in San Marcos, Texas. In a devastating instant, the driver lost control, the car flipped, and Jennifer was tragically lost in the accident. The devastation was absolute and immediate. From that moment forward, George Strait, the public figure, changed forever. He didn't just retreat from the spotlight, he ran from it as if it were a fire. The already private man became a recluse. In the eyes of the media, he stopped giving interviews almost entirely, unwilling to let the deepest pain a parent can experience be turned into a soundbite. His silence became his shield, a necessary armor to protect his grieving family, and what was left of his own shattered heart from the invasive glare of fame. While he continued to deliver timeless music, his personal life was locked away in a vault, creating the enduring mystery that would define his legacy. The only public testament to his grief was the creation of the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping children in need. A quiet, powerful way to honor his daughter's memory by turning his pain into purpose. While Strait was building a kingdom on quiet dignity, a completely different force of nature was taking country music by storm. Toby Keith exploded onto the scene in the 90s, like a stick of dynamite. He was everything Strait wasn't: loud, brash, confrontational, and unapologetically himself. Where Strait was the stoic cowboy in a starched shirt and a perfectly shaped hat, Keith was the rowdy patriot in a ball cap, singing anthems about bar fights, justice, and American pride. He wasn't afraid of a public feud, most famously clashing with the Chicks over their political statements and writing his fiery anthem, courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, in a direct, emotional response to the 9/11 attacks. He created a persona that was the polar opposite of George Strait's reserved, gentlemanly image. They were two kings ruling over the same genre, but from entirely different thrones. For years, fans and industry insiders alike assumed a silent rivalry, tension between the two biggest male stars in the business, who couldn't have been more different in style or substance. The truth, however, was far more complex and interesting than a simple rivalry. While they rarely appeared together, behind the scenes, there was a deep and unspoken respect rooted in a shared battle. They were both outsiders who had fought the Nashville machine and won. In the 80s, Strait was pressured to adopt the pop country sound that was popular at the time. He refused, stubbornly sticking to his traditional roots and forcing the entire industry to bend to his will. A decade later, Keith faced his own battles with record labels over creative control, eventually walking away to form his own label, Showdog Nashville, to ensure he could make music on his own terms. They were two generals in the same war. For the soul of country music, just fighting on different fronts. Strait admired Keith's fearless songwriting and his incredible, almost magnetic connection with his audience. Keith, in turn, revered Strait as the ultimate benchmark for integrity. They didn't need to be friends who went fishing on weekends. They were two titans who recognized each other's strength, sharing a quiet nod of respect that the public never saw. That hidden respect was suddenly cast into the spotlight by a devastating turn of events. In the summer of 2022, Toby Keith made a stunning announcement. He had been privately battling stomach cancer. For a man who had built his entire image on being an invincible, larger-than-life figure, it was a profoundly vulnerable moment. Yet Keith faced his diagnosis with the same defiant fire he brought to his music. He refused to hide or retreat. He continued to perform, even on days when the brutal treatments left him weak. His performance at the 2023 People's Choice Country Awards, where he emotionally sang "Don't Let the Old Man In," was a moment of raw, breathtaking courage that left the audience in tears. He leaned on his faith and his family, and just months before he passed, he played a series of sold-out shows in Las Vegas, a final, defiant roar from a true warrior. It was this incredible display of grit and heart that set the stage for the most unexpected tribute in modern country music. Following Toby Keith's passing in February 2024, messages of love poured in from every corner of the world. But it was the tribute from the quiet man in Texas that stopped everyone in their tracks. George Strait, the man who let decades pass, without a personal word to the public, took to social media to break his silence. He said, "Toby and I got to know each other a little bit. We were both from Oklahoma, and I was a huge admirer of his songwriting and his singing. We're all gonna miss him, big time." He didn't stop there. In a later statement, he expanded on his thoughts, and his words were a stunning revelation. He praised Keith's boldness, and most importantly, his guts. Coming from a man known for his impeccable composure and understated grace, the word guts was a cannonball. It was the ultimate sign of respect for Keith's defiant spirit, very quality that made him so different from Strait himself. The King's tribute was more than just a condolence. It was a message that needed to be decoded. When George Strait praised Toby Keith's fire, he was acknowledging a different kind of strength, one he himself didn't wield, but deeply admired. Strait's life was defined by quiet resilience. By enduring an unspeakable tragedy through stoic silence, Keith's life was defined by loud resilience, by facing every battle head-on, and inviting the world to watch him fight. In that moment, the silent king was tipping his hat to the outspoken warrior. It was a poignant reflection on mortality from a man who had seen too much of it. Strait's words, "You get to a point where you start looking back a lot more than you look ahead," was a rare, vulnerable glimpse into his own soul. He was honoring a peer, but he was also contemplating his own legacy and the profound importance of saying what's in your heart while you still can. In the end, George Strait's decision to speak so candidly about Toby Keith was one of the most significant and moving acts of his entire career. It was a moment of pure unity that transcended their different styles and public personas. The famously reserved icon broke his own sacred rule, not for publicity, but for respect. He honored a man who, like himself, had carved his own path and never backed down from being exactly who he was. In doing so, Strait didn't just pay tribute to a fellow artist. He revealed a piece of his own guarded soul, reminding us all that, in the pantheon of American music, integrity and heart are the ties that bind all true legends. He proved that sometimes the most powerful words come from those who speak the least, creating a final beautiful harmony in the unforgettable story of two of country music's greatest cowboys,